Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to session 4 on role of universities in Green ODA. Please welcome Professor Donghan Kim, the chair of this session. Professor Kim is currently the professor at the College of Engineering of Korean University. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Thank you. I hope that you can hear me well. Again, my name is Donghan Kim. Welcome to the fourth session of the conference on the status and prospects of the Green ODA of the Republic of Korea. I enjoyed some of the previous, not all. I had another job to do, so I only could enjoy just several nice presentations, especially Dr. Donald Seliger's presentation. I enjoyed very much. Anyway, because we are way behind our schedule, let's get straight to the presentation. Okay. First, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of this session, Dr. Motuma Tolera, the Dean of Wando Janet College of Forestry and Natural Resources. Dean Motuma is currently a member of national and regional REDD plus secretary committees and task forces. He is also involved in consultancies related to the forest management and REDD plus issues, including designing benefit sharing mechanisms. So please join me in welcoming Dean Motuma.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon for everyone. In my presentation, I will try to highlight some of the issues that we do as a higher learning institution in relation to REDD+ activities. Next slide. Yeah, our college is as you mentioned earlier, it's called Wando College of Forestry and Natural Resources. We are part of Hawassa University, one of the first generation universities in Ethiopia. And this college itself was established in 1978 actually to train forest technicians, because by then forest degradation, fast decline in forest cover was felt throughout the country. So it was agreed that training forest technicians to lead this activity of rehabilitation and also working on curbing deforestation was necessary. So I can say that the college has got over 40 years of teaching, research in the community service activities, and especially in forestry sector, but later many other programs from other natural resource management areas were added to the previous programs in the college. We are located actually in Central Rift Valley area in Ethiopia, where many other natural resources of management activities are going on, like many resources, national parks around us, Rift Valley lakes around us, and also many other high forests. So in terms of training for forestry and other natural resource areas, we are physically we are in a very much very good position to train our students. Our vision is actually to be one of the top colleges in the area of forestry research and teaching, in the not only in Ethiopia but also regionally at East African level. Next slide. In terms of structure, the university has got about 9 colleges. So this college is one of the 9 colleges of the university. So the focus here will be forestry and other natural resources related areas. We have about 176 academic staff involved in teaching and the research, and also we have supporting staff who are really behind the success, full accomplishment of the activities of the teaching learning process. Next slide. Yeah, this is the profile for the academic staff, and now we are moving towards having more PhDs because we are some of our new PhD graduates are arriving. So we now have, at the moment, we now have less BSc, more MSc, MA, and again, the number of PhDs are increased by 7 at the moment, while I will be doing this presentation. Next slide. In terms of programs, these are really the BSc programs that we are focusing on. As you can see from this slide, we have forestry-related programs. We have also other programs in the other natural resource management areas like environmental science, soil watershed management, GIS, natural resource economics. We also have wildlife and ecotourism. So I can say in general, this is really a center of excellence for forestry in the natural resource management, education, as well as research. Next. In terms of MSc programs, we also have about 12 MSc programs. In our MSc programs, they are more or less similar to the BSc programs, but as you can see from the red highlighted ones, which I think is also very much related to the theme of this conference, where we focus more on climate change issues like climate smart agriculture, climate change in development, also assessment of greenhouse gases from the forest sector, agriculture sector, and energy sector. These are really one of the major focus areas in our MSc program. Next slide. PhD at the moment, we have 2 PhD programs. The first one is the PhD in climate change and bioenergy development. This especially focused, it has 2 subspecializations. One is climate change mitigation and adaptation. The other is more on the bioenergy aspect, as related to also climate change. And second one is PhD in agroforestry. This was opened this year. We received students this year, and we have a plan to also open another 3 PhD programs very soon in forest management, wildlife management, and watershed. Next. In terms of students, we have about 2,000 students actively engaged at the moment at PhD, MSc, and BSc levels. And the plan now is we are going in. We are like a research university very recently, so we'll have more. We'll open more MSc and PhD programs. So the trend for the future is to have more number of students in the MSc and PhD areas. Next. I think, as you might guess, research teaching, research, and community service is the major activity in the college. But what I will be trying to do now is I will try to focus on community service activities, which we are carrying out, especially in relation to RED Plus and the MRP, because I thought that this is more related to the theme of the conference. So next. These research areas and community service areas, we have two channels of funds from this. Okay, so thematic-based research we have. These are more or less the government funded, and we also have others which we do through collaborative ways. Next slide. And I brought this slide to give you some background on the commitment of Ethiopia in terms of climate change mitigation. We have got a strategy called Climate Resilient Green Economy Strategy. So in this strategy, though the amount of emission from Ethiopia at the moment is not as such very high, but it's one of the fastest growing economies. So in the near future, this emission is going to double or even more than double. And in the green, in this green climate resilient green economy strategy, the country is committed to maintain the current level of emission, even less with fast growing economy. So in this course of green climate resilient green economy strategy, about 130 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent gas is going to be like the abatement potential is going to come from the forestry sector. So the forestry sector is given really huge attention in the process of leading the climate resilient green economy because of its huge emission abatement potential. So we have a RED plus activities in the country to implement or to materialize this 130 million tons of carbon dioxide emission reduction. Next slide. So in order to support this activity, our college is really taking the lead in capacity building. As I said, the country is following a kind of climate resilient green economy strategy. So every other sector, the plans, the development plans are really weighed against this climate resilient green economy. To materialize that, there is a huge task in the forestry sector, especially through the RED Plus activity, and our college is leading the capacity building. And for example, during the readiness phase of the RED Plus, which was started about 2013 in the country, we trained 410 almost like trainers, and also we did awareness creations for journalists and public relations experts, so that they can really play a great role in popularizing the initiative. Next. The other activities also, it's not only at federal level, but there are regions bordering us, and we do a lot of capacity building for these regions, which are really implementing RED Plus, but which needs really huge capacity building in terms of training their expertise. Next. With the commission, where we contribute a lot in the forest inventory, in terms of training the field crew, in terms of also leading, giving technical advices, and also in the material support. We also sit in the technical working groups nationally, and the then we also sit in the steering committees. I have 1 minute, so I want to go to the MRV part of my slide. Go on down, please. Next slide to MRV. Yes, next slide. We have got a national. We are involved in the national capacity building of in measuring, reporting, and verification. This is a national project supported by the Royal Norwegian government. And then in this, in the first place, the college's capacity is being enhanced through this project, PhDs, also short-term trainings and sabbatical in the study leaves. Next slide. And with this, what we are doing is we opened 3 MSc programs that are nationally, in which experts are pulled from the federal governments and regional governments are being trained in this area. We have about 167 experts have put their MScs, and these experts are spread throughout the country, leading these activities of greenhouse gas measuring, reporting, and verification. Next slide. Next. I think I have to also highlight. Next slide, please. These are the laboratories, our laboratories in which we do a lot of greenhouse gas monitoring. And okay, thank you. And we also have had a project which ended just last December with Korea University, which was supported by KOICA, and this was also on climate change in the forestry sector in Ethiopia. So we worked on curriculum development, teaching materials, laboratories, capacity training. Is not only to our staff and the experts, but also nationally for higher officials, and the outcome was shared. The slide, next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, this is a picture from the same project. The left one on training of students, also high-level policy makers and the like. So in this project, we are going to strengthen more on even restoration activities in the future. I think I have to conclude by saying that we are engaged in capacity building in RED+, MRV, and also awareness creation for policymakers, and try also engaging in research, especially in development of country-based models to estimate greenhouse gases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean Mutuma, for sharing your effort and great achievement with us. Let's thank our speaker one more time with a big round of applause. All right, now let's move to our second speaker, Professor Bujidma Borku. She's an associate professor at Department of Renewable Energy Resources and Environmental Technology of Mongolia International University. Her experience and education in the atmospheric and biophysics sciences established her expertise to teach and conduct research in areas of physics, soil biogeochemistry, and forest management and ecology, to atmospheric gas analysis and field research. With a uniquely international background, including attending a school in Russia, earning bachelor's and master's degree in Mongolia, consulting with a German development cooperative, working with a renowned US agency to collect and analyze air samples that track greenhouse gases, and earning another master's degree and a doctor's degree in sciences at United States University. Please welcome Professor Burku.
Thank you, Dawang Kim, Professor Dawang Kim, for very, very detailed introduction. I really appreciate it. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and professors and ladies and gentlemen. So I will start sharing my presentation right now. So my talk will be focused on the strength and the capacity to address climate change in Mongolia. So this is the big topic, but I will talk about very shortly. Next, keep going. So I'll just talk first on a little background, brief introduction on forestry in Mongolia. And then I will move on to role of Mongolian University in the climate change studies and do short conclusions in my presentation today. So hopefully you can see this picture clearly, is that the forest ecosystem is so much diminished during the last few millenniums. So if you look at this light green color, used to be the forest. Now only the leftover is the green, dark green colors. And if I accurately draw that rectangle right there is the Mongolia. So when we see that Mongolia is located in the area between the edge of the boreal forest area that disappearing due to the climate change. So that's why it's very sensitive topic in Mongolia. So Mongolian taiga forest is the part of the largest forest ecosystem in the world. Taiga means the boreal forest. So the forest reserve is about 8% of the total area of Mongolia. So if you look at this map, you can see that in the southern part where the Gobi Desert, it's mostly the Saksawul forest. But the green area, when it's highlighted the dark green, is the boreal area. So hopefully you can see it. So this boreal area is now very vulnerable to the changing environment, to the climate change. So because of the locations we are in the transition between the boreal area is moving towards the north. So it's very sensitive topic. So Mongolian government is implementing strategic plans to meet the climate change response. This table includes the vision until 2030 that related to the sustainable forest management of the country. So for example, green development policy, it says, enhance the carbon sequestration in forest sector by intensifying reforestation efforts and expanding the forest cover areas to 9% of the country's territory. The state policy on forest, it says reduce greenhouse gas emission from deforestation and forest degradation by 2% and 5% respectively. And the other NDC It says increase the efficiency of afforestation measures, and 9% of total area forest restored. So Mongolia is very committed to forest action to restore the part of the forestry. So the role of the universities in climate change studies. So during in this framework, Mongolian universities working together on a joint master's program to strengthen the ability of the professionals in the forestry and the climate-related fields. And so here I just a little bit here I'm showing some flow chart where these red squares were the implementing parties and beneficiaries included. And Mongolian University of Life Sciences, Mongolia International Universities, and Mongolian University of Science and Technology. These three organizations, the universities, we are working together to create a new science master's program on climate change issues, So other organizations such as Mongolia Academy of Sciences, technical and vocational and educational training, and State Inspector of Forestry, State Environmental Offices. All these four organizations are actually the one actual implementation when it comes to the sustainable forest development. So they will play and also very important role when we get the master's program started. And of course, we cannot make it without supporting entities from international and national level. And national level, we are the Ministry of Education and Science, Ministry of Nature and Environment and Tourism, NDC, Mongolia, and other non-government organizations will be the support for us. And the internationally, we are seeking support from COICO and GGGI and universities from Korea and UN RED program in Mongolia. So national and international involvement in this is the greatest support, because the climate change is not just Mongolian problem, it's the global problem. So here I just show the Mongolian education program follows the ISCED 2013 standards, and in that book, we have the index, and it's called the climate research. So right now, this program does not exist up to date. It's not in the undergrad program even. So we are starting the master's degree for the joint master's degree for this time. The purpose of the program is the climate studies joint program is designed to strengthen the ability of climate and related field professionals to respond to climate change. The program will develop a new curriculum that meets international standards and strengthen teachers' capacity, train new interdisciplinary professionals, and establish a base for laboratory equipment and field measurement. So it will be pretty much very new graduate level degree on studying climate change, focusing on the forest sector. So since it's interdisciplinary master's program, it will include the universities majoring the natural sciences, forestry, ecology, biology, and environmental sciences. The School of Agroecology from Mongolian Life Science University and the Department of Horticulture, Forestry, and Landscape Architecture is from Life Science University, and Department of Renewable Energy Resources and Environmental Technology is from MIU, and Department of Light Industrial Technology and Engineering from Science Technology University. All of these universities has own master's program from each of this field, but our goal is to combine all this into one climate change, not really combine, but work together to create new climate change research master's program. Here, syllabus we already submitted to Mongolian government to be approved. Of course, this is the international standard syllabus, but we want to develop a method suitable for Mongolian unique nature, which is very vulnerable to climate change. So professors from the Life Science, University of Life Science and the Mongolia International University, they have capacity to teach most of these topics. However, some courses which is required teaching from international experts, Korean professors who are experienced in the from international level, especially this Mark III classes, we need professors, we need experts from abroad to develop this curriculum. So of course there will be some strength and challenges, and strengths are the collaboration of faculty members, laboratory facilities. Each school facilitates excellent teaching and research capacity. Each school has own laboratory and own faculty who will teach all this, and we can combine them and make the effort to do all the climate-related researches. Local and international networking to continuously secure the required teaching professionals. So we will be recruiting, we will be inviting professionals from especially Korean universities and from other universities to collaborate with us and help us. The Mongolian forest experts and public policy makers will be important contributors of improving the quality of higher education. There will be we will have very intense collaboration with the forest experts and policy makers. Our schools in Mongolia, every school conducted in Mongolian language, but this program will be the English proficiency. It's all 100% in English, and all the research results will be published in the international peer-reviewed journals. Of course, there will be some challenges when many universities work together and work with the governments and the international organizations. There will be very high professional administrative coordination in between. And luckily, we have very good foundation for that. The University of Life Science has very strong foundation with the relationship with the government, and Mongolia International University has the very good relationship internationally, especially in Korean government. So all bachelor graduates, which is experts, they will be from Mongolian universities. They will be working in the field, but they need more. They need more English training. That's why it's challenge, because the Mongolia has this limit for the credit hours for the teaching for the master's program, and the teaching English will take some of the credits, which is a little bit not really complicated, but we can work through it. So it's a little bit challenge, I say. So in the end, I want to conclude that the joint master's program has a potential to become a regular knowledge sharing platform related to the climate change, not just in national level, but also internationally. And graduates should become international professionals with knowledge and understanding of multi-phased concepts of climatology and related environmental, social, and economic sciences. So they able to implement green development ideas. So then universities and other education institutions are national hubs for passing on the knowledge to new generation, and we hope that we can reach through this program, we can reach teach the related sustainable forest management and how to use the resources that are available up to this date. So my presentation is okay. Thank you for your attention. It's a short presentation, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Borku, for the great presentation, for sharing the university program in forest management and keeping your country more beautiful. I know that Mongolia is a very beautiful country. Okay,
Thank you.
let's give one more applause for our presenter. Thank you. Okay, let's move to our third speaker of today. No, not today, this session. I'd like to introduce our special guest, Mr. Alistair Rich. He's the director of Asia Pacific Sustainability, Asia Society Policy Institute, which is the acronym is ASPI. So Mr. Rich leads and oversees activities on Asian carbon market development and ASPI's overall sustainability portfolio. Alistair is an international expert in greenhouse gas emissions trading systems and a known leader in their development. He is currently leading a major project to contribute to resolving ETS design challenges and building regional connections of China's national ETS. Previously, he was leader of the European Commission project to support the Korean government's implementation and upgrade of the first national ETS in East Asia. Mr. Rich, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. And yes, it's a real pleasure to be invited to speak at this workshop. And I'll give I guess a brief presentation on carbon pricing cooperation and the role of universities in green ODA. So my presentation will give a background to carbon pricing and talk about the drivers for this and for particularly emissions trading systems in relation to their ability to deal with greenhouse gas mitigation. I'll talk about some of the emerging developments particularly in ASEAN countries. I'll then set out the Korean experience, which is valuable to share with developing countries, and then I'll finish with the looking at the potential role of universities. So next slide, please. And next slide, please. So I'll keep this fairly brief. I realise that we're a bit behind schedule, so I think the background you're probably already fairly familiar with in terms of carbon pricing characteristics. So carbon pricing, as you probably know, is a policy tool to reduce carbon emissions cost effectively by passing through the cost to the emitters. It can take many different forms. With Korea, you're obviously familiar with emissions trading systems, which is perhaps the dominant form of carbon pricing. The main benefit of an emissions trading system is that it guarantees the reduction of emissions, and it also enables the reduction to happen cost effectively. So reductions can happen where they're cheapest. Another common and popular carbon pricing policy is carbon taxes. And also there's crediting mechanisms. So we've heard about those earlier in this meeting, and then also internal carbon prices. So next slide, please. And also in this conference, we've been hearing about NDCs and long-term development strategies. So these are all driven by the Paris Agreement, again, which you're no doubt fairly familiar with. So the Paris Agreement is setting a goal to hold the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees C, above pre-industrial levels, and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees C. So the NDCs are setting out the national commitments to reduce emissions. The issue at the moment is that the NDCs are not ambitious enough. So the current estimations are that the commitments made so far would lead to a temperature increase of more than 3 degrees C versus the aspirational target 1.5. So there's a problem with the level of ambition of the NDC. But what we are hearing about more frequently and regularly is this concept of net zero. So Korea has signed up to net zero goal by 2050. That's net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Japan has also made that commitment. China has made a commitment for carbon neutrality before 2060. We now hear that the Biden administration is very keen on net zero by 2050. So this is, I guess, the long-term strategy, and the long-term strategy requires action in the short and medium term. So net zero by 2050 means that the 2030 target needs to be suitably ambitious to achieve that. So next slide, please. So this is, I think, I wanted to pick on carbon pricing because I think it's a really important policy tool. We've heard about NDCs, but really the NDC is just a target. It needs policies to achieve that target. And the emissions trading system, which is now well established in Korea, is exactly the type of policy to enable countries to meet ambitious greenhouse gas mitigating targets cost effectively. The Paris Agreement is a very much overarching policy, but there are some key drivers under the Paris Agreement towards emissions trading systems. And number one, emissions trading systems enable reductions to happen where they're cheapest, so it's a low-cost policy tool. An ETS with an absolute and declining cap guarantees emissions reductions, and declining that cap to zero can clearly contribute to net zero goals. The ETS cap can fit well with the carbon budget-based NDCs. In the case of Korea, how Korea's NDC is broken down to sectoral carbon budgets, and the sectoral budgets link well with the KTS cap. Under the Paris Agreement, the international carbon market can be implemented through inflow and outflow of carbon units, and an emissions trading system provides the right level of monitoring and reporting verification to enable this inflow and outflow of units in NDCs to take place. And the ETS can be designed to work in developing countries. So, for example, China has just started its ETS this month, formally. Its design is particularly flexible to support industrial growth. It's a kind of tradable performance standard approach that it is quite easy politically to implement for fast-growing economies. But there's other mechanisms as well to enable economic growth within this type of policy. There are various adjustments and aspects that can be used to protect industrial competitiveness and prevent the production shifting to other countries. So this is, for example, free allocation. And also you may be hearing about the EU's proposed carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is also a way of protecting against carbon leakage. And also really important for achieving net zero goals is the ability to raise a lot of funds and revenue. So as this policy becomes switching to auctioning for allocation, there's a huge amount of money that can be generated through the revenue that can be shifted to deep decarbonisation projects like, say, hydrogen steel making or CCU. So this has already been demonstrated in the EU as the high value of an ETS, and it improves industry buy-in. Next slide, please. So I wanted to say here a bit about what's going on in some developing countries, because ETS is not just a policy for certain developed economies, and in fact the sectors that are targeted have generic technology: power sector, industry sector. The companies that operate these are international companies, and they there's no reason why this policy can't work in developing countries. China, as I mentioned, has just launched the world's largest ETS. In ASEAN countries, it's very interesting because there's a lot of momentum coming. There's a lot of momentum, and there's a lot of development, and there's a real embracing of this policy idea. So Indonesia particularly stands out because it's got a legal basis already established. It's got a plan to start its emissions trading system by 2024. This year, it will be starting a pilot for the industry sector. And as you're probably familiar, Indonesia will become one of the world's largest economies in the future. It's forecast to be the fourth largest world economy. So it's a huge GHG emitter, and it's really on a fast track to develop this policy. Vietnam also is making good progress. Its legislation was agreed late last year, and it's been developing a lot of valuable building blocks already. Thailand has been working since 2015 on a voluntary ETS. Philippines also is establishing this type of policy. So I guess the issue for these countries and other countries is that they need to learn quickly, and they need to develop their policy fast, because achieving net zero goals by 2050 is a big challenge, and you need proper policies that are quickly introduced and quickly scaled up. So there's a great opportunity for these jurisdictions to learn from more countries that have got more track record in this policy, like Korea. So they can develop their policies faster, they can develop more effective policies, they can use these to mitigate their emissions and promote more of a level competitiveness playing field. These having successful policies can enable them to be more ambitious in their NDCs and their long-term strategies. So next slide, please. So I wanted to now move on to look at Korea, because Korea provides a great reference case for sharing experience in this type of policy. In recent years, there's been a lot of exchange between Europe and Asia, but there's a diminishing return of that because the Asian context is quite specific, and some of the challenges are different in Asia, particularly how to deal with government-controlled power markets, how to deal with the type of industry sectors that occur in Asia. So the lessons that are learned and the solutions that are gained in jurisdictions like Korea can be highly valuable to other countries. So the Korean emissions trading system, I'm sure you all have good familiarity with this, has now been operating since 2015. It's got a very good structure because the cap aligns with Korea's NDC. It's now moved this year into phase 3 with a strengthened design. And this year, the settings of the KETS will be aligned to the net zero goal under the Green Deal that we heard about earlier. So it's really a great reference case. And next slide, please. This shows the structure of Korea's NDC by 2030 and the fact that it's made up of different sectoral budgets, power, industry, etc. And then next slide, please. And then this slide is very interesting because it shows the work that's going on at the moment by universities in Korea and other organizations to look at how Korea can get to net zero by 2050 and what this means by 2030, what type of reduction in emissions would be required. And, you know, so it's actually a very ambitious pathway that Korea is planning to work to, but it's committed to this through the Green New Deal. And it really does indicate that carbon pricing will become a very important policy, not only in EU, not only in China and Korea, but in the US as well. And jurisdictions that don't have a reasonable price on carbon will face increasing trade barriers and trade penalties. So the benefits to Korea for exchanging this knowledge would be to help shape the global climate policy based on its own policies. So Korea is the front runner in Asia, and it's got a first mover advantage in being able to share its ideas and its structure for the policy with other jurisdictions. It's got an opportunity to level the competitiveness in the playing field between Korea and its competing economies, and by sharing its experience to other jurisdictions, it will support Korean business, who will benefit from more consistent and harmonized policies in other jurisdictions, including jurisdictions where they have manufacturing sites that supply equipment. So the next slide, please. So the final slide is really the role of universities. So universities play a key role in supporting governments in policy development. So in Korea, there are universities that are working to help the government develop its national GHG mitigation target setting. The previous slide showed how universities are working to develop the 2030 target, the pathway to reach 2050, the sectoral budgets, how the targets are shared by ETS and non-ETS. And this requires a lot of, say, macroeconomic modeling. It requires competitiveness analysis. It requires policy research. It requires energy system modeling and development of marginal abatement cost curves. And there's lots of technical and economic analysis required. And ultimately, this is a policy that requires economic impact assessment, particularly when you come down to the level of ETS and the cap setting, and how will it impact on, say, carbon leakage, how will it impact on GDP competitiveness. So this is a very demanding role for universities to provide high quality evidence-based analysis on the impacts of these policies and the specific design. ETS requires allocation and auctioning and MRV. It requires activation of the carbon market and measures to manage the price of carbon. And then there's also auction revenue recycling and how to use funds to support decarbonisation. So yeah, there's a lot of work that's already been done. Korea has been working in this field for many years. I think in terms of opportunity to share this with other jurisdictions, there's already an ASEAN-Korea carbon dialogue under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that is being initiated, this has been an ideal venue to share this type of experience, and there may be others as well. But certainly I think that Korea is in a unique position, being able to look at its own successful track record and seen a number of win-win benefits for sharing this with not only ASEAN countries, but African nations as well, and other developing countries. And so, yeah, I think this is only going to get more important as the impact of net zero becomes more evident on the reduction targets that need to be made between now and 2030. And this is definitely demonstrated to be one of the most effective and economically viable policies to achieve that. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for listening. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rich, for your insightful presentations. And I'd like to ask all the audience to give a big round of applause to Mr. Rich for his remarkable presentation. Okay, then we will move to our discussion session. So now I'd like to introduce Professor Huan Kang. He's an assistant professor at the Graduate School of International Studies of Seoul National University. Please, Professor Kang.
Professor Kim, Professor Kim, there is an issue, as you may know, that Professor Taekyun Kim of Seoul National University initially planned to participate in this conference, but due to unavoidable situation, he has become not available today.
Okay, all right.
So there will be only one discussant, that's Professor Kyuwon Kang of Korea University.
Okay, thank you for the information. I forgot to mention that. All right, so I'd like to ask you to welcome Professor Kyuwon Kang.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much for having me in this very timely and important conference, I think, which contributes to provide future direction of responding to climate change. And I also would like to thank the presenters for their informative and interesting presentation. From Dean Matum Tolera's presentation, I could understand that your university already has numerous programs related with climate change, and it seems as though your university is highly interested in further developing these programs. And I'm about to introduce the ways for universities to participate in solving climate change issues. And as Chair mentioned, it is very important to note the importance of universities' collaboration with national public and private organizations and international organizations. And from Director Alistair Rich's presentation, I've learned about the effective role of emission training system. And it's interesting to see how ETS is emerging in ASEAN countries. And he pointed out how important for universities to do the research to operate the ETS successfully. I think there are largely two ways for universities to participate in solving climate change issue. The first is the universities and professors can transfer or exchange knowledge and skills with other countries. Then how can they do that? Simply, professors can individually participate in international development projects or consultations based on their specialties. Since climate change issue is recognized as a cross-cutting issues, regardless of their specialties such as health, engineering, etc., professors can consider climate change issue in their engaged projects. So that's what professors can do. And when universities are the agents, universities can participate in the international development projects to improve the capability of the universities in the partner countries. As public-private partnership is becoming growingly important, opportunities for universities to participate in the development projects are also increasing. And I think that's what Professor Tong is doing through the KOICA program. For example, universities can provide consultation on upgrading curriculum, share their know-how of operating successful programs, and transfer their administrative skills. And Dean Tolera and Professor Ku mentioned projects of Koika Korea University and their universities are good examples of these. And furthermore, universities can participate in capacity development programs. Universities may provide trainings to the experts and the government officials of the partner countries. It can be done by inviting them to study abroad to obtain a degree or to receive a short-term training. And it can be also done by dispatching professors to teach in the partner countries. Now, I would like to switch the gear a little bit to talk about ways to facilitate these activities that I've just mentioned, such as international development projects, consultation, and training programs. Although the effects of the climate change are concentrated to the developing countries, its problems are not only for the developing countries, but also developed countries. And this climate change is an issue that all the countries have to exert an effort to solve. Therefore, these activities can be facilitated by the regional collaboration of the universities. I think this collaboration among the universities is going to become growingly important and active, and this collaboration is especially important for the countries in the same region, as they may have similar environmental characteristics. And I think this regional collaboration discussion is somewhat linked with Director Lister Rich's mentioned emergence of emission training system in ASEAN countries. So to sum up, my point is that universities can transfer or exchange knowledge and skills with other countries, especially through regional collaboration. And of course, another very, my second point is very short and clear. It's about universities educating its own people in their country. The universities can take a role in educating students to solve climate change issue. Of course, universities may raise green ODA experts, but regardless of the students' majors, because it's cross-cutting issue, the universities can educate the students to be aware of, feel responsible, and know how to solve these issues. So thank you very much. That's it for my point.
Thank you, Professor Kang. Please forgive me to introducing you as university professor. When I saw your face, I realized that I made a mistake. Anyway,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you for your kind understanding. Is there any feedback from our speakers to Professor Kang's comment? Well, if not, I'm very much tempted to finish this session because we are way behind our schedule. Is it okay? All right. All right. Then please, I'd like to ask all of you to give a big round of applause for our three presenters and Professor Kang for her excellent discussion. Thank you very much for your. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kim. And with this, we now close session 4, and we'll move on to our final session of the day without break.